Hello, everybody. We can all agree that we all use some form of knowledge management in our daily lives. And in this podcast, I'm attempting to answer a question that came to me from a group of students. Now, the students were exploring market research as a field for their careers. And one of the questions that they asked me was, is a personal knowledge management system important? Now, this question actually took me off guard. Now, because I have spent 15 years in this field, and when somebody asks me about knowledge management, I know that there is a huge importance to it. The reason I got caught off guard with this question is because it had me looking at my own system. I had to go back to the drawing board and look at what I was doing in terms of knowledge management. And my own personal knowledge management system was chaotic and highly self centric. Now, it was not shareable with others, it was not usable by others. And honestly, I had never even thought about any kind of plug and play model for my own knowledge. When I looked at my own knowledge management, it consisted of bits and pieces in a notebook, bits and pieces in my computer, and a lot of it on my own personal recall factors. And honestly, it was completely disorganized. So, to rectify that, I started a project which was to document the knowledge that I had gathered over the years. Now, as I started the project, I was clear on two things. One, all the knowledge that I was actually documenting, it had to be searchable. And second, it was necessary that it was easy to retrieve. Because these two things will help make the entire thing easier. It will give it a certain robustness that will come because you will keep updating. So you search for a particular piece of information, and if there are changes, you'll keep updating it. So it had to be searchable and easy to retrieve. One other thing that I wanted to use the KM was to showcase a sense of time linearity. Because when you look at any kind of industry research, no business is actually a standalone feature today. There is cross industry impact. And when you put it on a timeline and showcase the linearity in it, this cross industry impact is easy to assess. You find that you have the capability to predict future trends and also highlight inflection points. So the time linearity was extremely important for me, along with ease of retrieval as well as being searchable. The time linearity also has a separate advantage, is that it shows a complete picture. It's not isolated. As I said, the cross industry impact, it starts showcasing in a much more complete manner, and it rounds it up completely. And effectively, you know how a market is probably going to change, or you can predict with a large amount of surety as to, this is what the market is going to do. Now, being a personal system, I did not exactly go in for an off the shelf knowledge management system. So I did not want to spend money on a proper, product for KM. So I decided to use what I had in my own computer, which was basically to use its own strengths. And yes, there will be much more weaknesses than I can ever imagine. But for me, what I had seen is that MS Excel worked very well. The reason is that because of the columns and the cells, the horizontal and vertical behaviors, it helped create a pattern. And for me, it was easier to track information and knowledge, and also help merge a lot of similar ideas, or the cross industry impact. So it helped me do all that based on the horizontal and vertical, and the columns as well as the cells. Now, what it achieved for me, when I looked at my own knowledge management and when I started doing it, what it achieved was it highlighted where I had to concentrate to fill the gaps. Now, after having been so long in the industry, there still are going to be certain areas that I might not have concentrated on at any given point in time. So I had to look at those gaps, and this highlighted those gaps. Secondly, my effort into learning was actually more directed. It was more towards actually getting those gaps filled out rather than, covering the entire ground and finding that a lot of the information that was there was not usable. So the effort became much more concentrated, it was minimal, and it was more, I would say that the focus was there in it. It also highlighted my road forward in the career, because what happens is that once you have the knowledge and you have everything in place, you know where you stand over a period of time, and that gives you clarity that tells you where you need to be in the next phase. So that's what it provided for me. One other thing it showed me very clearly was how interconnected we are in the world today. You know, when I started looking at the whole knowledge that had to be put together, the time linearity and the impacts of cross industry, it showed me that we are highly dependent on each other, and globalization realities are far more than we can ever imagine. The reason why I say that is COVID actually highlighted this. Our supply chains did get impacted. So when you start looking at every piece of information, every piece of data that comes in, you start looking at it with a very objective mind, and you know that there could be challenges, and you start listing out those challenges. And that became a reality when one talked about, say, an interconnected world. It also made it much more easier for me to reduce the effort, you know, the overall effort that one puts to remember a lot of things, that reduced for me a lot. So that reduced effort had its advantages, because I could easily forget some things because I knew, yes, I've already saved it. It is searchable and easy to retrieve. So it became easier for me to concentrate and focus on things that are much more important and which actually will add more value to the knowledge, rather than, keep trying to remember, oh, these pieces of knowledge are important. What happens when someone does this from the very beginning of their careers, or the moment you start working in the knowledge field and you decide that, yes, this is something that I want to do from the very beginning, it actually works as knowledge control and an audit, because you capture the knowledge and you reduce it and document it, and over a period of time it actually controls the knowledge. It becomes an audit function for you as an individual, and sometimes it just becomes a default feature because you tend to do it over and over again. The other thing is that there is a real simplification of how the knowledge can be used, how the knowledge can be gained, and knowledge sharing becomes a reality. So the moment you simplify it, it is easier to share it with, say, 10 other people, and you can showcase it in a much more say, visual manner. That becomes much more easier to do. Other reason that you one must consider doing this from the very beginning is because it gives you the time to make the structures. If you want to move ahead and make it a much more robust feature, then you need to work on the structures, because there's no improvement without structure. That's a reality of life. The moment you make it more robust and you give it a structure, it becomes a lot more human. And when I say human, it's, you take it and you can actually apply it, and you can take it and also showcase it to people, and people will be able to visually understand as to how it works. And it becomes a much more human centric effort, which at least survives one generation. I'm not talking about, say, 10 generations, but I'm talking about one generation which can then use that as a base and move forward. So, to answer the question, that is a personal knowledge management system truly important, I believe it's very important, because you can use that to build on top, and you can go ahead and create a structure that works for you, that works for others. In fact, this can become a talking point for a lot of people in their own lives, because you can take it to the next generation and showcase it to them that this was the world before and how much it has changed over a period of time. Like, a lot of us come from a time being where we have seen dial-up internet and we are now seeing high-speed internet. So there is a lot of difference and a lot of learnings that come from just one industry. how this one industry has impacted, say, 10 other industries, that's also as much knowledge. And that's where you really need to concentrate your knowledge management on. And you can actually have a very impactful and a meaningful understanding of how these interconnectedness work in a global way. So, my suggestion is that if you're thinking that a personal knowledge management system is important, the answer to that is you're right. It's important, and you can definitely use that to become a better person tomorrow. Thank you.